Hi guys, it's me, ChazRHD, and welcome to, on this Friday evening here in the UK and in Europe, the Practice 2 watch-along for the 2023 Mexico City Grand Prix. I hope you guys are well ahead of what is going to be really the first proper representative session of the Mexico City Grand Prix weekend. We had Practice 1 finish about, about 2 hours or just over 2 hours ago. We had quite a few reserve drivers, though, competing in the session, and we'll get into the results of Practice 1 in a moment just so you guys can see what the pace was and how it all ended up. But yeah, it wasn't really that serious of a session. It was pretty quiet from what I heard. I didn't watch too much of it because I was also preoccupied with the football, but yeah, it wasn't really that much of a proper session. The only thing the teams really would have found out in that first practice is how the track is feeling with their, the balance of their car. But I don't think anyone was pushing anywhere near, as hard as they absolutely could in first practice. So we should get a lot more runs on the soft compound tyre in this second practice session and should find out way, way more in practice 2 about how the teams are shaping up for the weekend. But before I get into the results of Practice 1 and what I'm looking out for in this session, just want to quickly say, again, hope you guys are well, and no matter what time zone you're in, what part of the world you're from, hopefully you are all doing well, and you'll join me tonight in watching along Practice 2. If you can't watch along, though, and you can only listen, then don't worry, I'll keep you bang up to date with everything going on in FP2 in Mexico. Unfortunately, there won't be a poll running as well in the live chat tonight because there's not really any questions that I want to ask you guys ahead of this session because, of course, I asked you guys in my weekend preview last night, which, by the way, if you haven't checked that out, link below in the description. I asked you guys in that stream who you think is most likely to challenge Red Bull. You guys said Mercedes, so let's see in this session whether that, does turn out to be true. But I'll just quickly hide the timer so we can get into the results of Practice 1. And Max Verstappen, no surprise, ended up quickest by about 1/10 of a second from Alexander Albon. Very good session for Williams there, even though I don't think that many people were really pushing. But still, nonetheless, good session. And Max Verstappen quickest on a 1:19.7. So we'll keep an eye out for the lap times in this session just to see how initially, say in the first 20, 30 minutes or so, how they are going pace-wise relative to that lap time. So, yeah, Verstappen quickest, Albon second. Perez, good start to the weekend, only 1/3 of a second behind Max in third, Norris in fourth, Leclerc fifth, Piastri sixth, Carlos Sainz in seventh. Carlos, though, had a hydraulic issue in Practice 1. I think it did get fixed, but it wasn't exactly the smoothest session, and also Charles Leclerc was complaining a bit about his power unit. And then you have Daniel Ricciardo in 8th, good start to the weekend for him. Esteban Ocon in 9th, and Lance Stroll completing the top 10. And then the bottom half of the order, you got Lewis Hamilton in 11th place for Mercedes, Hülkenberg 12th, Zhou 13th, Sargent 14th, and then Behrman in 15th. Behrman stepping in for Magnussen in Practice 1. And I've got to say, very impressive a first practice session of his, I think, entire Formula 1, or the first ever practice session he's done in Formula 1, Oliver Behrman. For him to only be 3.5 tenths slower than Hülkenberg, and I don't know what the tyres they were on when they did their quickest runs, but for his first practice session around a track that it can be pretty difficult is, I think, very impressive. And remember, Oliver Behrman is, I think, 18 years old. So yeah, very impressed by Behrman's first session there. Fernando Alonso all the way down at 16th. Isaac Hadjar 17th. Jack Doohan 18th. Frederick Vesti 19th. And Teo Porcher sadly only did 4 laps in practice 1. He had a persistent issue with the brake pedal, and that's why he never set a lap time, which is sad. I think he will, though. If I remember correctly, he is doing another practice session this season. I think it's in Abu Dhabi, which is going to be a bit difficult for him because, of course, he, with the last Formula 2 race weekend being in Abu Dhabi, he's going to have to do a practice session and then step into an F2 car and secure his Formula 2 championship, which he is likely to do over Frederick Vesti, who, of course, drove for Mercedes today. But as you can see, wasn't exactly the most, the most important session. You're going to have a practice session during a race weekend. But yeah, Red Bull starting well, McLaren and Ferrari okay. Williams, a good strong start for them, but who knows whether that is a legitimate strong pace from the Williams team. Now, quickly, before I get back in onto the page where I will count down to practice 2, just want to update you guys as to what the next 2 live streams on the channel are and what the content is for the rest of the weekend. I will be going live tomorrow at 6:15 p.m. UK time for firstly the practice 3 watch-along and then a preview and watch-along of qualifying. We'll be live for over 5 hours tomorrow night, so make sure to join me for that. And then on Sunday, I'll be live 2 hours while the race starts at 6 p.m. UK time for the race watch-along, and then obviously I'll be live for a reaction afterwards. So I'll just get the timer back on screen. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there. And make sure, if you haven't already, to smash that like button. One other thing I need to add is, unfortunately, haven't been able to grab enough pictures from this weekend's Mexico City Grand Prix. So the pictures you'll be seeing on stream today will be from the last Grand Prix in Texas. But of course, from tomorrow's stream on, the pictures will be up to date. But what am I looking out for in this session? Well, Mercedes, I'm looking to see whether they legitimately have got a strong single lap pace like they had last year at this track, and like I think most people are expecting. I am also looking out for the Alpine team. And the reason that is because I have a good feeling about them this weekend. And I think they could be the real surprise team of the weekend. So we will keep an eye out for them here in Mexico. Also, AlphaTauri, I've got a decent feeling about them going into the weekend. Obviously, Ricciardo in 8th in practice 1, which is a decent start. So, yeah, Mercedes, Alpine, AlphaTauri are the teams I am more so looking at going into this session. Of course, Williams, after they ended up second in first practice, we'll see what they can do, what their pace is like. I would be very surprised if they ended up, in the top 5, 6, or even in the top 10, really, in this second practice session. But, Mercedes, Alpine, and AlphaTauri are the teams for me to look at. Just some news, though, on AlphaTauri. Yuki Tsunoda has, I think, now exceeded the amount of parts for the power unit he is allowed to use during a season after AlphaTauri have made changes, and Yuki Tsunoda will start this weekend's Mexico City Grand Prix from the back of the grid. So really, AlphaTauri have got one car in the fight this weekend, which is Daniel Ricciardo, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Ricciardo has had pretty good pace and history here at this circuit. Of course, he took pole position here 5 years ago and has finished on the podium here. Could have finished on the podium a couple more times as well. And of course, this time last year, in his only properly good race for McLaren, he finished in 7th place, which was the best the McLaren really could finish during that Grand Prix. So watch out for Ricciardo. I have a decent feeling, especially about him at the AlphaTauri team, as we've got, 5 minutes to go now until practice 2 is underway. Let me know, guys, in the chat, for the people obviously watching, who are you looking at going into the session? Who are you looking out for? And who are you most interested to see in this practice session? And yeah, just to confirm, Oliver Behrman is 18 years old. His birthday is in May. So yeah, very impressive career he's had. Of course, he won the Italian F4 and ADAC Formula 4 championships in 2021. Was he second? No, third he was in F3 last year. And he's had a pretty good, I'd say a pretty good first season in Formula 2. He's had 4 wins in total. And of course, we have a couple races to go in Formula 2. And looking at the championship for Behrman, he's got a realistic chance of finishing 4th in the championship, which would be some debut season, I think, given how young he is. And of course, next year has to contend with Andrea Kimi Antonelli as his teammate. What a season Formula 2 is going to be in 2024. As F1 are just currently playing through the F1 intro. And in a moment, once they show it, I'll let you know what are the tyre compounds for this weekend. One thing I did see, though, in practice 1 is the Pirelli test tyre was being used. So I will keep you guys updated, especially when that tyre is in use. And the tyre compounds this weekend are the C5, C4, and C3. So the 3 softest compounds, and the Pirelli test tyre is the closest they have, really, prototype-wise, to the C4 compound. So, yeah, we'll keep our eyes on that through this session. Track temperature, about 40 degrees Celsius, so pretty hot in Mexico City. And obviously, humid as well. And yeah, with the 3 softest compounds for this weekend, that definitely is going to make this weekend quite crucial when it comes to tyres. As some threatening clouds around in Mexico City. There was, I think, a forecast for rain today, but I think it's not quite hit as the forecasters thought it might. But there is still a couple dark clouds, especially one big dark one over this stadium section. But it looks like it's going to be okay. And certainly the fans of the grandstands don't seem to be that keen to get jumpers on and hoodies on either. As Max Verstappen in his car is awaiting the signal to get out there on the circuit. And of course, his teammate Sergio Perez hoping for a strong weekend where he can, not officially, but pretty much secure second in the championship, which should be enough for him to be at Red Bull in 2024. As George Russell, we're just seeing on the broadcast, him awaiting the start of the session. And so is Alexander Albon. So, let me quickly get rid of this countdown and go on to the watch-along part of the stream. And obviously, practice 2 will be an hour-long session. I'll sync up the timer at the 59-minute mark. And as well, once the session is ended, guys, I will try at the end, in the last say 5-10 minutes after the session is finished, I will display on screen the gaps through the field on the running order on the left-hand side. As we're about to get underway. And there is Sergio Perez, we can see on the broadcast. And it would be amazing if Sergio Perez was able to win this weekend. But realistically, because of how great his teammate is at this circuit, chances are nigh on impossible, I'm afraid. It's going to take something quite remarkable for Perez to win. As the green light goes on, and the first car out on track is the Mercedes of George Russell, and we are underway for second practice. The most important practice session normally of a normal race weekend, and it is good that we have a normal race weekend until we go back to the sprint format, of course, in Sao Paulo next weekend, as Perez is coming out on the test compound. Again, the test compound is basically a set of C4 tyres, which this weekend is the medium compound tyre, as Perez now filters onto track. And we'll get a great ovation from the Mexican fans as all the cars pretty much filtering onto the track. And there you go. Let me just readjust the position of the timer. And 59 minutes to go in practice 2. As we look on board here with Sergio Perez, who's behind a Williams of Logan Sargent, I believe. Thankfully, as I said in my weekend preview last night, Logan Sargent does have experience around this track. This was this circuit last year. This was the first session he ever did in Formula 1 last year, so that will hopefully help him have a stronger than usual weekend and maybe be as strong as he was in Texas last week. And if you're wondering as well why the prototype test tyre, whatever you want to call it, has been brought this weekend, it's because, of course, Pirelli need that data on that compound and the prototype compounds to get a good idea as to whether the tyres they've designed for 2024 are, are doing what they should be doing. And that's why we had, I think, was it back in Japan? We had the prototype tyre, I think it was. And that's why we've got it here as well, so they can get as much data as possible. Sergio Perez begins his first lap of second practice, was third in practice 1. Let's see what he can do in practice 2. As he does 346 kilometers an hour in the speed trap. Went a bit too deep at the exit of turn 1, but he gets through it, as everybody out there pretty much on a test compound, as Daniel Ricciardo goes quickest for AlphaTauri on the hard compound tyre. And if you're wondering as well what the lap time difference around this track should be on a single lap between the C5, the C4 and the C3, the soft, medium and hard, because it's a shorter track layout, the difference between the soft and the medium is not going to be as big this weekend as it normally would be. So it's probably more so going to be like 0.3 of a second, the difference between the soft and the medium, and then the same when you compare the medium to the hard. So it's not really that bad of a thing to do quick laps on harder tyres, because I don't think the lap time loss is that bad, as Sergio Perez goes up to second place. And we've got Logan Sargent up to third. Again, almost everyone is on the test compound. Sargent up to third. Charles Leclerc goes quickest on a 1:20.3. Remember, the best time in practice 1 was a 1:19.7. We're already not that far away from it, as Lando Norris now goes quickest on a 1:20.1. So Lando up to P1. With Leclerc second, Ricciardo third, Perez fourth, and Sargent in fifth. As there's a load of Perez fans waving the Mexican flag as Perez, I think, tours past. And we are now looking at the Williams, I think, of Alexander Albon. Yeah, who is on the test compound and is about to start his first, I think, proper flying lap of the session as he rounds turn 17, the final corner. And now starts his lap, but we've cut away to, on the Sky F1 broadcast, they've cut away to Rachel Brooks in the pit lane, which is not exactly what we want to see right now. No disrespect to Rachel, she's good at what she does, but we want to see the cars on track. As, yeah, clouds overhead, still a bit dark, a bit threatening, but still not, I think, bad enough for it to definitely present a threat. As Piastri is in 6th place. And then we've got Zhou in 7th. Sainz is in 8th. Alonso is 9th. Alexander Albon, by the way, just did the purple first sector a few seconds ago. And he's now coming up to the middle sector. And Albon, a 10th down on Norris after 2 sectors. Who just went into the top 10? Someone did. Esteban Ocon now has. Ocon up to 7th place. And then, yes, Stroll, that's who it was. He's now up to 8th. As Albon goes 2nd, splitting Norris and Leclerc. Albon, obviously, the reason he scored points in Texas was because of the disqualifications, but he still put in a pretty good weekend. Finished 9th in the sprint on pure merit, and then, yeah, did really the best he could in the actual race. As rain is starting to fall, but the sun is still shining. I expect there to be a rainbow somewhere, but the cloud to me that's passing over looks like it is just passing over. It doesn't look like it's going to properly affect this session. As Max Verstappen is now quickest on a 1:20.0, as Oscar Piastri completes a lap and stays in P10. So it's Verstappen, Norris, Albon, Leclerc, Ricciardo, Sainz is your top 6, and then you got Zhou up to 7th, with Perez 8th, Sargent 9th, Piastri 10th, and then Ocon 11th, Stroll 12th, Alonso 13th, Valtteri Bottas in 14th, Russell is 15th, and then you've got Magnussen 16th, Gasly 17th, Hulkenberg 18th, Tsunoda 19th, and Hamilton in 20th. Hamilton actually now goes up to 13th place on the medium compound tyre. Because a lot of people, though, on the test tyre, which is basically the medium for this weekend, pretty much everyone is on the medium. As I don't think that rain is going to affect the running on track too much, because the track temperature is so hot that I don't think it's really going to make a difference on the actual surface, as Sergio Perez does actually do a personal best first sector on the test compound. But yeah, I think, you know, they'll do these laps on the test tyre, but I think once we get another 15 to 20 minutes in, I think you'll start to see them use the actual compounds for this weekend's race, because they'll need to get good data, of course, ahead of qualifying and the race. Perez completes sector 2 and is still doing a personal best sector, but it's not that much up really on his best so far, as he just tours through now the final sector, which I like the stadium section in terms of, you know, the imagery of it looks really nice. But I do think in terms of the layout of the track, as Sergio Perez improves his lap time but stays in 8th, he only went like half a tenth quicker, did Perez. Yeah, I like the way it looks, and it does look magnificent, but I think for, you know, designing a track in a way that allows for better racing, I think it would be better if they sped up that final sector by quite a bit. I think you know, the bit where they turn right into the stadium and then you have that like hairpin like corner followed by a quick right, and then you go into what is basically the final corner. I think they should cut out that like hairpin like left-hander before the little quick right-hander. I think they should cut that out and just have them go straight into that final corner. I think that would be better. As Guy F1 have now cut to Martin Brundle, watching the cars from trackside. And yeah, the sun's still shining, but there is rain falling, definitely. Like a spring day in the United Kingdom, except it's probably, what, 20 degrees hotter than it would be if it was April here in the UK. As the Haas of, I think, Magnussen just touring through there. Of course, yeah, we had a few reserve drivers, in place in practice one. So the drivers in this session doing their first session of the weekend are Magnussen, Russell, Tsunoda, Bottas, and Gasly. So we'll see if, not doing the first session, whether it, affects those drivers a bit more than maybe it should. As Martin just commenting on the cars coming through the first 2-3 corners. Another thing with this track, I know, it's a famous racetrack. It's got a lot of history. It's been around for a very long time. And the atmosphere of the Grand Prix itself is typically one of, if not the best, every single season. But I don't think this track is a track that is especially, it doesn't wow you anywhere near as much as a lot of other racetracks, I think. And I think that is one of the real issues with this circuit, is a lot of the corners are not really that interesting. A lot of the corners here are pretty pedestrian. The middle sector has got, a really nice flow to it, but except for that, a lot of the corners are pretty slow and, again, pedestrian. So I think, again, speeding up the track and creating a better flow to it would really help this track. But whether they'll actually do that, who knows? But it definitely would help if they did that, because we've had a couple good races here in the past, but it's never been consistent. We've never, and I think lately we've never really come into this particular Grand Prix expecting it to be, anything jaw-dropping, to be honest. As Russell is on a new lap, and he's just completed Sector 1, but he's not gone any quicker than his personal best, as Alex Albon is now quickest for Williams. Don't know what lap time, but he is quickest. And then you've got Verstappen second, Norris third, Leclerc fourth, Alonso now up to 5th place for Aston Martin. And then Sainz in 6th, Ricciardo 7th, Gasly up to 8th. And then Zhou 9th and Hulkenberg from the back all the way up to 10th place. And then Perez in 11th, Sargent 12th, Piastri 13th, Russell 14th, Hamilton 15th, and then Ocon 16th, Magnussen 17th, Stroll 18th, Bottas 19th, Tsunoda 20th, as we're 15 minutes into this session, and George Russell does improve up to 8th place on the medium compound tyre. As we are now looking at the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz on a set of mediums. We did hear rumours coming into this weekend that Ferrari, because of them being a bit tight on how many parts they've got left for their power unit before they incur a penalty, there were rumours that this weekend they would take a grid penalty, but Ferrari have decided against it, which I am surprised by, because the next Grand Prix in Sao Paulo is definitely going to be stronger for them, and you'd think they'd want to make sure they get, any penalties they need to take. You'd think they would want to get that out of the way here in preparation for the Brazilian Grand Prix next weekend, as Max Verstappen goes quickest on a set of mediums. A 1:19.5 as Valtteri Bottas now goes second on a 1:19.8. But that time from Verstappen is the best time of the weekend so far. As Bottas up to second. Leclerc on the medium has done a purple first sector. How's his middle sector? We'll see in a moment. We're actually looking at Carlos Sainz. Leclerc's a bit further behind, and Leclerc is up by almost a tenth on Verstappen after the first two sectors. Both Ferraris on a set of mediums as they come round the final corner to the line, and Carlos Sainz goes third of a second behind Verstappen, and Leclerc goes second and is exactly 1/10 of a second slower than Verstappen. So good lap there from Leclerc, who's looking definitely a lot stronger in this car than he was a few months ago. As actually Daniel Ricciardo is up to third place now. It's Verstappen, Leclerc, Ricciardo, Sainz. Bottas now down to fifth on the test compound. Is a replay of Alonso locking his inside front tyre at turn 4, I think that is. And there's Russell going deep at turn 1, locking the inside front. Something very easily done because obviously you're going at such a speed down the straight and it's such a big stop into turn 1. As here's Hulkenberg losing the rear, coming through the exit of turn 7, which is the entry to the S's. As we now look at Lance Stroll on the medium compound tyre on a flyer. But yeah, Bottas is in 5th place for the moment. Good for him. And then you got Albon 6th, Norris 7th, Ocon is up to 8th. Alonso is in 9th. And then Russell is in 10th. And then you've got Gasly 11th, Joe 12th, Hulkenberg 13th, Perez 14th, and then Sargent, Piastri, Hamilton, Magnussen, Stroll, Tsunoda. So what can Stroll do from 19th place? As Russell improves up to 6th. There you go. And his middle sector Stroll is pretty good. He's only a 10.5 down after 2 sectors on Verstappen as Valtteri Bottas does a purple middle sector. As Lewis Hamilton goes up to 11th place. Mercedes definitely not running as low on fuel, I don't think, as they could be. As here comes Stroll, who goes up to 8th. Not a great final sector, but he's up to 8th. As Bottas stays in 5th, does not improve his final sector, which cost him. Here is Daniel Ricciardo on the test tyre. Understeer at the final corner, but he keeps it all together and does improve his lap time, but he stays in 3rd. But yeah, impressive nonetheless for the moment from Danny Rick. And yeah, in the next few minutes, we should see quicker and quicker lap times from, well, a lot of the drivers. As we are looking at Yuki Tsunoda just passing a couple cars on a outlap, I think it is, as he's currently down in 20th. And as it says on the TV broadcast, Tsunoda set the fastest lap of the race for the first time in his career. And thankfully, AlphaTauri had the gap to be able to pit him, come out in the same position, and get that extra point. And with the disqualifications that happened, he ended up, Tsunoda, he ended up finishing in 8th and took 5 points home. And that has really given AlphaTauri a really good opportunity to climb from the bottom of the championship up to 9th or even 8th before the end of the season, because they're now only 2 points behind Haas and 6 behind Alfa Romeo. As we now look at Oscar Piastri in the McLaren, who is on the soft compound tyre. And yeah, we'll see what he can do. You'd imagine he'll go right up the sharp end of the grid with this lap, as long as the conditions are not too bad. I think the track is slightly greasy in the final sector because of the rain that has dropped. So maybe that's why the final sector times are not quite as quick as we hoped. As Piastri now begins a flying lap on the soft compound tyre. Opens the DRS and now flies down to turn 1. And Sky F1 now go to an ad break. Brilliant timing. So we'll see. We'll see how quick his time is once they come back from the ad break. But until then, until they come back, let me see what you guys are having to say in the chat. Keep your comments coming. McLaren F1 race asks Chazza, what is the test tyre? The medium? It is, yeah, it's a prototype tyre, a test tyre for 2024, but it is a prototype of the C4 compound, which is the medium compound tyre for this weekend. So if I say that someone goes into a position on the test tyre or prototype tyre, then what I mean really is on the medium, but officially it's not the actual medium compound. Let's read a couple more comments before we get into the rest of this session. Vinster says, Max was slow if Bottas was right there time-wise. Possibly, yeah. Max, at the minute, quickest on a 1:19.5, which is a decent time. Pretty decent time to have so far in this session. We know he will go quicker than that, and, well, whoever ends up quickest in this session is going to be doing at least, I would say, a low 1:19, because I think on the soft compound tyre, you should be doing probably a 19.1, 19.2 at least. But with Max, maybe he can dip into the late 1:18s. Let me just quickly look to see what pole position was last year, the pole position time. So pole position last year was a 1:17.7, and that was on harder compound tyres. That was on the C4 compound. So just to give you a reference, Max Verstappen nearly 2 seconds slower at the minute than pole last year on the same compound. But obviously we're only in practice 2. I reckon if you were to do qualifying on the medium, I reckon you probably wouldn't go any quicker than probably a mid 1:18. Maybe a lowish 1:18. So, I mean, I know, what do you call it? These cars this year are not really that much quicker than last year's cars, and there is good reason for that. They did cut a bit of the floor downforce for this season, so the cars are not maybe as quick as we expected. But yeah, they don't feel like they've really moved on in terms of speed, which is a bit weird, because even though they cut that, some of the floor downforce, I still expected by this part of the season they'd be going maybe not massively quicker, but a bit quicker than last year. As yellow flag in Sector 2, and it is for Fernando Alonso, who has gone off in the S's section. He's not hit the barriers or anything. He's not hit anything, thankfully. But he's back on track as we return. Oscar Piastri is now quickest on a 1:19.1, which is a pretty good time on that tyre, I would say. So Piastri quickest. And yeah, that's a replay of Alonso going through turn 8, I think it was. Maybe because of the drizzle we've had, touched a white line or the curb a bit too much, and he did a full 360 as Aston Martin's struggles continue. So, Alonso, you'd think, will be back in the pit lane as Alex Albon is now in second place. Logan Sargent is now in 8th place. The two Williamses have done a soft tyre run. Sargent knocks over a bollard at turn 2, which is probably another reason why we've got a yellow flag. As Max Verstappen now out there on the soft tyre, so let's see what Max can do. Really, I'd say Max... Oh, as he loses the rear end severely on the exit of turn 3. Proper snap of oversteer. Really, Max, I think, should be aiming to do a 118.8 or a 118.9 at least in practice 2 on the soft tyre. I think that'd be at the very least good time. Maybe should be getting a bit more out of it. We'll see. But it is Piastri, Albon, Verstappen, Leclerc, Ricciardo, Sainz, Bottas, Sargent, Russell, Stroll, and then Norris, Ocon, Alonso, Hamilton, Gasly, Zhou, Hulkenberg, Perez, Tsunoda, and Magnussen. As Max Verstappen, despite that snap of oversteer, has done 2 purple sectors, and he's pretty much half a second up on Piastri after the first 2 sectors. This might be a mid 1 minute 18, despite there being more time on the table. And here he comes, and it is a 1:18.686. Max Verstappen quickest by a country mile. And that is ominous going forward for the rest of the weekend, as now Lewis Hamilton is on the soft compound tyre. Lando Norris has just gone up to second place, only a 1/10 of a second away from Verstappen. So not too bad of a time there, as Hamilton 4/10 away after the first 2 sectors. That is not positive if you're a Mercedes fan, as Esteban Ocon on the soft tyre goes up to 3rd. Very good time from Ocon in the Alpine, as Hulkenberg does a purple first sector. As Hamilton to the line, very good final sector, and it is 3rd, which is not, too bad, but maybe not as good as I expected, as Tsunoda on the medium goes up to 15th place. Who else has just improved? I think someone just improved. Don't know if it was Logan Sargent or not. As Hulkenberg on a much better lap. He's just coming through the final couple corners. Haas looking for a much better weekend than they had at their home race, where they debuted this new B car that did nothing for their performance. And Hulkenberg goes 7th, which relative to Albon is not that great, I have to say. So Hulkenberg in P7 and about a 1/10 of a second away from Alex Albon in the Williams, which, coming into the weekend, I thought Williams would be slower than Haas. So yeah, that, as I said, that's not a great time there for Hulkenberg, who I think this weekend is his 200th Grand Prix. Congratulations to him if that is true. As we've now cut away on the Sky F1 broadcast to Martin Brundle trackside at turn 4, where we have had in the past some classic overtaking action there with Ricciardo and Vettel. I remember in 2016 where they somehow didn't collide with each other. Yeah, I'll let you know what the others do on the soft tyre soon enough. But I'm not very encouraged by Lewis Hamilton's time there. That put him in 3rd place. Again, the final sector was good, but a couple 1/10 of a second away from Lando Norris, which I did not expect. So I hope Mercedes have got more time in the bag. Maybe Russell, who we know from last year's race here was quicker than Hamilton in qualifying. Maybe Russell can get a bit more time out of the car, as the clouds have darkened quite a bit. Still not really, proper rain to put this session to bed, thankfully. as Martin just making his observations at turn 4. And this might be the last Grand Prix Martin goes to until, I'm guessing, Las Vegas. He'll be there because it's the first Grand Prix there. And then you would imagine we'll be at the final race possibly as well. We'll have to see. As Russell, by the way, has improved, but he's only gone, I think, in 8th place. Slower than Ocon and Piastri as well. As Sergio Perez, I've just seen, on the soft tyre, is 3rd. Let me just update that quickly. So Perez up to P3. And I'll update the rest of the order when they actually show it properly on screen. As now Valtteri Bottas on a quick run. And yeah, Daniel Ricciardo, another good lap, and Ricciardo up in 4th place for AlphaTauri, having a very strong weekend is Ricciardo. So it's Verstappen quickest, Norris 2nd, Perez 3rd, Ricciardo 4th, Hamilton 5th, Ocon 6th, Piastri 7th, and Russell only went 8th. So that is not good for Mercedes-Benz. Carlos Sainz has only gone 9th on the soft tyre. And then you've got Albon 10th, Hülkenberg 11th, Leclerc 12th. Gasly has only gone up to 13th, which I'm surprised by. And then you've got Bottas at the moment in 14th, but he's about to complete a new run on the soft tyre and goes all the way up to 3rd place. Valtteri on fire, of course. We mustn't forget, even though the race he had was an absolute stinker. 2 years ago, at this race, he took pole position. So he does have a good history here. He's been on the podium a couple times as well. So, not too bad of a Valtteri Bottas track. He's proven there that he's got some good pace this weekend. That's how it feels with Bottas, I have to say, at his current point of his career, is you don't really know if it's going to be a properly good Valtteri Bottas weekend until you see Friday practice. He's either on it, is Bottas, from the word go, or he's not. And it appears, and as well, we have to consider that this is his first practice session of the weekend, because in practice 1, Teo Porcher was in the car, only 4 laps. This is, a very hot start to the weekend. As Zhou, his teammate, only goes 12th quickest. As Verstappen's car, I think, being worked on as they get ready for the long runs, which of course crucial that they get data for that. So it is currently Verstappen, Norris. Leclerc now goes up to 3rd. Leclerc, though, a 10th down on Lando Norris. So Lando still looking good out front. Not out front, but, ahead of Leclerc. So it's Verstappen, Norris, Leclerc, Bottas, and then, Perez, Ricciardo, Hamilton, Ocon, Piastri, and Russell. That is your top 10 in Mexico with 26 minutes remaining of this session, as Oscar Piastri is out on track on SF hard tyres, but he's coming back into the pit lane. Interestingly, the hard compound tyre I expect definitely to be the tyre of choice this weekend. When it comes to the race and the tyre that gets used the most, it should be the hard tyre because of the durability it gives. Plus, it's not really that much slower compared to the medium and even the soft this weekend because of the shorter layout. As Piastri has just come through the pit lane so he can do a practice start at the exit of the pit lane. As I can see, Carlos Sainz is on an outlap. So is Alonso and Tsunoda. I wonder whether Alonso is going to try another flying lap, as Kevin Magnussen's on a flying lap. He's not done a personal best middle sector, unfortunately, but he is probably going to improve on 18th place. as here he comes now through the final corner to the line, and he actually doesn't improve. Well, actually, he has done a run on the soft tyre earlier, so that was just another run, I think, on the soft. So he stays in 18th place. And his teammate 14th. So Haas look like they've probably got, at the minute, the worst car on the grid for this weekend's race. As Alonso is not going to be doing a race run. He is on the medium compound tyre and is presumably, yeah, he's doing a long run, is Alonso. But Aston Martin don't really have a good read on them at all going into this weekend, as Alonso being told it's about 10 laps until expected rain. So probably got another, 15 minutes until the rain possibly hits the track enough for the drivers to not really be able to get any meaningful data out there. But yeah, Aston Martin, their highest placed driver right now is Lance Stroll in 17th place on the medium compound tyre. So yeah, it's hard to say really, where are Aston Martin at? Alonso, you would expect, would be probably around this track compared to Stroll, and because it's a shorter layout, probably be half a second quicker than Stroll. So yeah, I don't think Aston Martin's pace is necessarily bad, but it's not necessarily going to get you on the edge of your seat, put it that way. But I don't think there's as much to worry about with Aston Martin's pace this weekend as maybe some Aston Martin fans out there think. But what I am going to do for the next few or next couple minutes is just read out a couple comments in the chat, as it appears that we have finished up the quali runs building into obviously tomorrow. And the best lap time of the weekend so far, a 1:18.6, which I'm sure that tomorrow Max will be doing probably a 1:18.2, 1:18.3, something like that in practice 3, and then in qualifying he's probably going to be doing a mid to low 1:17 is Max, who, if you were to ask me right now who is going to get pole position, I'm very confident at this point that it will be the Red Bull team, who look just too good for the rest, as Max is on now a long run. But let me read out a couple comments in chat from you guys. Crystal Racing says, Martin berating the drivers for wilting in the Qatar. Humidity like a boomer. Thumbs down. Yeah, I didn't like what he had to say. I mean, he's entitled to say it. Of course, when he raced in Formula 1, the cars were brutal to drive. Physically, it was, incredibly hard to drive. No power steering. Obviously, manual changing of the gear. The cars were very unreliable, and you really had to, in the races back then, you had to take care of your car and really manage your car and bring it home because of how unreliable they were back then. So, his era, yeah, physically it was very demanding, but I think one thing that Martin is not accounting for, which I'm surprised he's not accounting for this, is that these cars are still some of the best, or not the best, some of the quickest F1 cars we've ever seen. And that is what makes these cars, in terms of the G-forces the drivers have to go through and the strain they have to go through in these cars, that's what makes that particular area tougher than the cars of the 90s or the 80s. Of course, if these cars didn't have power steering and they, had a gear stick, it would be, incredibly, incredibly hard to drive these cars physically. But I think what we saw in Qatar was just a little too much in terms of the physical demands for that particular Grand Prix. I don't know why they decided to put the Qatar Grand Prix on in early October when it was going to be too hot. They should have put it really like a month later or a month and a half later like they did in 2021. And it would have been still difficult, but it would have been okay if they had it, say, mid-November. But yeah, they were lucky to get away with no serious incidents were the FIA and obviously Liberty, because could have been really bad PR if something very preventable had happened in that Grand Prix, which was now 3 weeks ago. But yeah, I think what I'm going to do, because we are basically coming to the end of the session, I think what I'm going to do is get the gaps up on screen. So I can display to you guys, obviously, what the gaps are throughout the field. As Alonso still out there on the mediums, as Logan Sargent has reported it's raining, as Yuki Tsunoda has just improved up to 12th place on the soft compound tyre, which is not too bad. Of course, Tsunoda starts the race this weekend from the back. It doesn't really matter what his low fuel pace is like, but for Ricciardo up in 6th place, it's looking good for him and good for AlphaTauri. They look like they could have a proper strong weekend, which is what they need if they're going to finish 9th or 8th in the championship as Sky go to an ad break. So I think what I'll do is I'll now get up on screen all of the gaps through the field so I can show you guys how things are looking. So obviously Max Verstappen quickest on a 1:18.686. And let me get up my timing screen on my end. To get up the proper gaps once it loads. Right, so Lando Norris in second, just over a tenth of a second behind. Very good lap from Lando, and he's looking right on it this week. And I've got to say that, and I know Piastri's had a great season considering he's a rookie, but I do think Lando in the last few races has not quite got maybe as much praise as he deserves, because he's been on the podium, Lando, ever since the Singapore Grand Prix. Podium in Singapore, Japan, Qatar, Texas. That's 4 podiums in a row. And he was, second in Singapore, second in Suzuka, third in Qatar, and second in Texas. Brilliant consistency. And I think Lando is, again, he's not quite getting enough praise, but I understand why, if it is down to Piastri just being so impressive, his teammate, considering he's a rookie. And then you've got Leclerc third, Ferrari look okay, Bottas up in 4th, Alfa Romeo. And their hopes for this weekend will be quite a bit further up. As we've got then Ricciardo up in 6th, Hamilton 7th, Ocon in 8th. Mercedes for me are the biggest disappointment in this session. No doubt about that. 7th and 10th is not where I thought they would be. And if you're a Mercedes fan, I don't think you have the justification to be as confident going into the rest of the weekend now So maybe you were going into the weekend itself as Russell in 10th. I think could do possibly a better lap than what he did, because he was a 10th, or he is rather a 10th and a half away from Hamilton in 10th, which, 10th and a half around this track is quite a bit of time. And then you've got Carlos Sainz, surprisingly in 11th place, not very good, which is, again, surprising because Sainz normally tends to be pretty quick here. And then, Tsunoda in 12th, AlphaTauri overall looking pretty good. And then you've got Zhou in 13th place, being hammered by his teammates so far. And then Albon in 14th. So Williams, obviously, it's been proven now that their strong pace in practice one was nothing at the end of the day. And then, Hülkenberg in 15th. Haas looking desperate, I think, going into the rest of this weekend. Gasly, I'm surprised at in 16th. Him being as far down as he is. I expected more. Even though he didn't do practice one, I still expected more. He's nearly 0.6 of a second slower than Ocon, which is, quite the surprise. And then you've got Sargent 17th. And then the final three cars. Stroll in 18th. Stroll, I think, has got a problem with his car. I'm going to have a look in a moment to see what that problem is. His best time, though, done on the medium compound tyre. And then, Magnussen in 19th. And then Alonso in 20th. But if you're an Aston Martin fan, don't necessarily go full panic stations, because I don't think it's as bad as it looks at the moment. But, let me just shrink this down, if I can, in a way that is going to fit all on the page. And hold on, I'm going to have to try and make it, see if that will work. Fit to screen. And I'll try and play around with this, see if I can get it to properly work. Or actually, I'll just leave it like that. The text a bit bigger than it was on the other PC with the presets I had there. Of course, for the streams next year, I am going to redo my graphics and all of that. But that is at the top there. Max Verstappen, quickest on a 1:18.686. And then, Lando Norris in second, a 10th away, and then Leclerc third, Bottas fourth, Perez fifth, Ricciardo sixth, Hamilton seventh, Ocon 8th, Piastri 9th, Russell 10th, and then Sainz, Tsunoda, Zhou, Albon, Hülkenberg, Gasly, Sargent, Stroll, Magnussen, Alonso. Let me just undo what I just did to the source there. And hide it now. So, going forward from here and looking into, tomorrow and the rest of the weekend, how is the pecking order, you may ask? How is it shaping up? I think for qualifying, the order I would say at the moment is probably Red Bull quickest. I do have a decent feeling about Ferrari. I think they're actually looking a bit better than initially expected. So I've got a good feeling about Ferrari here. So I'd probably I think they will show more tomorrow. McLaren do tend to show more on a Friday than Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull do. So, yeah, I think it'll be close between McLaren and Ferrari, but I think Ferrari might, in the end, be second quickest. It's going to be very close, though, with McLaren. And then Mercedes, where do they figure into this? I don't think Mercedes look as strong as what I expected. I think Mercedes are looking more, as sad as it is to say, more like the fourth best team here in Mexico, at least when it comes to pace over a single lap, as clearly there's some damage there to the floor, the front part of the floor, and Alex Albon's Williams, I think, because it's sparking a bit too much than it should be. Yeah, Red Bull, I'd say quickest, and then McLaren and Ferrari, very equal, I think, in the battle for second and third best team. Mercedes, I would go fourth. And then fifth best team is very hard to say because you've got Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri, Alpine, all pretty competitive. I think at the moment, I'd probably lean towards maybe AlphaTauri. But again, it is very hard to say. But I think, yeah, the battle for fifth best team is between Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri, Alpine. And then after that, you've got Aston Martin. I don't think we truly know where they're at the minute. I think they'll be in that battle, of course, for fifth best team. And maybe they'll end up the victor. We've got to include them as well. So a 4-team fight for fifth best team. Should be exciting qualifying in the battle to make it into Q2 and Q3. And then after that, I'm pretty confident that the two slowest teams are Williams and Haas, but I would say Williams ahead of Haas. So, yeah, Red Bull quickest, McLaren and Ferrari second and third, Mercedes fourth, AlphaTauri fifth, and then, again, the other three teams, I'm not sure. And then, yeah, Williams ninth, Haas 10th. It's going to be very exciting qualifying, no doubt about that. And of course, tomorrow, I will be doing practice rewatch along to see how the teams get on in the final practice session before qualifying. And then we'll be getting into our full qualifying preview and going through the data of this session, looking at the sector times, just looking at, the upgrades that certain teams have brought and just how teams have looked so far this weekend and really what their chances are going into the rest of the weekend. But the teams that are looking better than expected, yeah, McLaren, Ferrari definitely better than expected. I've got a decent feeling about them. Alfa Romeo a lot better than expected. AlphaTauri better than expected. So we've got a few interesting stories to watch out for sure, in qualifying tomorrow, as we enter the final 6.5 minutes of practice 2. McLaren from race saying, thought you said McLaren were going to be slow, Chazza. Can't always get it right. But I think, guys, I'm going to bring the stream to an end because it is almost midnight here in the UK. Plus, the cars are just touring around doing their final laps to complete their race simulation. So there's nothing really going on. So I'll just hide the timer and just quickly let you know what the plan is for the rest of the weekend. Tomorrow, I will be live at 6:15 p.m. UK time for the Practice 3 and Qualifying Watchalong in Mexico City. Firstly, Practice 3 Watchalong until about 7:30 p.m. And then from 7:30 p.m. till 10 p.m. we'll be previewing qualifying and then getting into the session at 10 p.m. and then obviously conducting that business from then on until 11:30. And then on Sunday, we'll be live for the race watch along, live 2 hours before lights out at 6 p.m. UK time. Remember, of course, the clocks do here in the UK go back an hour at, is it 1 a.m., 2 a.m. on Sunday, very early Sunday morning. So please do factor that in with the timings for Sunday. But yeah, be live. I think it's the same time I'll be live or going live as I did last weekend for the US Grand Prix race day as well. But guys, that is it for the Practice 2 watch along. Hope you guys enjoyed the content. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and come along to those pieces of content for qualifying and the race, and this is a great place to keep up to date with what is going on in Formula 1. Before you go as well, guys, make sure to smash a like button. Let's try and get up to over 30, maybe even 35 likes if we can by the end of this stream. That'd be great if we could do so. Of course, it does help the channel and the algorithm. And as well, if you want to keep up to date with content on this channel, make sure to follow me on Twitter or X, ChazzaHD, the account name is over there. And if you want to keep up to date with content as well, another place you can join or follow me on is Discord. If you go to the description, there is a link to my Discord server. And yeah, if you want to keep up to date with not just when I go live and upload videos, but also when I do updates as to, you know, what content I'm going to be producing at a certain time of year, that's a great place to be, you know, a great community to be a part of if you want to keep up to date with what I'm doing. But guys, until qualifying day here in Mexico and my stream starting tomorrow at 6:15 p.m. UK time, it has been me, ChazzaHD. Goodbye.